Sure. So when we think of the Restore Act, we think of it in two separate components. There's the one component that the CPRA board needs to independently determine that gets funded. And, well, independently. They go through a grant process, but they're ultimately the decision makers. And when we think of those dollars, and this is what we refer to as buckets 1 and 3, the two big projects we're considering that are on the table are the Houma Navigation Canal Lock and the Calcasieu Ship Channel Salinity Control measures. And those are two of the larger restoration/infrastructure projects that have been on the books for more than a decade that bring tremendous amount of benefits to the region. Bucket 2 is a group of projects that ultimately have to go with a comprehensive plan, and the decision makers there is the Restore Council themselves. And for this first round, we get to submit 5 different proposals. And based on what we know today, and this could change, but our current thinking is that the 5 projects would be consistent of a variety types of techniques that we've utilized across our coasts, starting with the most expensive. We're looking at the Maurepas freshwater diversion, which would divert about 2,000 CFS of fresh water into the Maurepas swamp, reestablishing that estuary, a really key project for our state. Moving down the river, we'd be looking at marsh creation in what we refer to as the Golden Triangle, pulling material from Lake Bourne. This is a pretty crucial piece of marsh creation on the east side of the river. Moving on and staying on the east side of the river, we're looking at additional living shorelines or oyster reef projects in the Biloxi Marsh area. The proposal is currently for about 9 miles. This builds on a project that we're currently doing engineering design on that was funded through the Coastal Impact Assistance Program. And then finally, in the Barataria Basin, looking at the West Grand Terre project and marsh creation around beach building and around the Fort Livingston area with marsh creation component in the back. The fifth item that we're looking at is a program. It's actually a program with a study. It's partnering with the Corps of Engineers and potentially EPA to look at managing the river. We have a lot of great tools that we've developed together that are focused on restoration activities. But one of the premises of the Restore Council is to put ecosystem maintenance on the same level playing field as navigation and flood control. So we want to look at the Mississippi River and look at what the upside is and the downside is of all of those various activities, and see if there's a way that we can look at a suite of projects that work together to meet all 3 of those goals.
And I understand a key part of that last project is to look at beneficial use of dredge material that the Corps is dredging every year anyway to keep the river open for shipping.
No, that's correct, and actually looking at it through our lens of beneficial and putting the material in places that are consistent with or beneficial to the overall construction of the master plan. Not just where it's necessarily convenient that builds marsh, but can we get that marsh to places where it's part of the overall state's goals.
Okay. And the Houma Navigation Lock project, how much money are we talking about for that?
That total, right now, the total estimate's in about $450 million range. That project, we have just selected one of the 3 alternatives and are getting ready to go into engineering and design. We've got a lot of great data on that from the Morgans of the Gulf project that was led by the Corps of Engineers, a lot of other great data that was geared toward independently. So it's a pretty solid component, but it's in that $400 to $500 million range.
And the project on the Calcasieu, that also is another large
yeah, and it's in the same range. That one's a little further behind the Houma Navigation Canal. It's still in planning. We hope to have a tentatively selected plan toward the end of this year, but we do anticipate it would be in that $400 to $470 million range. It could come down depending on what it entails.
So I didn't hear the word diversion in any of these projects. Is my assumption that as you get into the natural resource damage assessment process that you guys may be asking for more money for diversions there?
That's correct. So, the largest project in Bucket 2 is the Maurepas freshwater diversion. But of the sediment diversions, we're focused on the funding right now through the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. And in that criminal penalty, it made $1.272 billion available just for the construction of barrier islands and/or diversions. And with that, we've kicked out some barrier islands, but we have not allocated more than $200 million total out of that pot. And what we're hoping to do is, a big piece of that is doing a pretty significant evaluation of all of the sediment diversions on the lower Mississippi River, so that we can make an informed decision of which additional diversions we'd push forward with that $1 billion available through NIFWIP. If it looks like one of those projects could meet the needs of NRDA, Natural Resources Damage Assessment, we absolutely think that that would be a viable spot for it as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you.